For ad-free listening, our newsletter, special deep dive episodes, and members-only benefits, you can subscribe to us at that'sjustwild.com. Hello and welcome to That's Just Wild with me, Steve Backshall.
And me, Lizzie Daly.
And me, Sarah Roberts.
The podcast all about nature, wildlife, and how I once learned how to tell what penguins have been eating by studying the colour of their squirty poo.
Classic
More
Steve.
poo. It's always poo.
It's always poo. And today, we're talking about party animals.
Way, who likes to party? We're talking about animals going big, not talking about raves and cocktail parties, are we? Or are we actually? We're talking about all sorts of intoxication and fun in the animal kingdom.
So the second I heard this, I was put in mind of one of the most legendary stories in all of natural history, but certainly in terms of animals getting drunk. And it's all to do with elephants and marula fruit in Africa. So there is a very famous drink you can get in South Africa, which is a little bit like Bailey's. It's called
delicious.
Amarula, and it has a picture of an elephant on the front of the bottle because it comes from this idea that elephants...
Marula tree.
Yeah, the elephants will eat the marula fruit, or ones that have dropped down onto the ground, that have fermented, and they'll eat it in huge numbers and get hammered, right?
I mean, I don't blame them. If you've ever had those Springbok shots, they're blooming delicious.
But how much do you need as an elephant to actually get drunk?
Well, so this is the twist in the tale of this story. It turns out it would need to be an enormous amount. It would need to be almost inconceivable amounts. I've got one scientific paper here that said it would need to be about 400% of what they would normally eat in a day just from fermenting marula fruit in order for an elephant to get drunk. So where does this idea come from? Is it real? And I found an article here about elephants eating marula, which you are going to love.
I can't wait.
Because it started off as Zulu folklore. Apparently this is something that has been going back for hundreds and hundreds of years, talking about elephants getting drunk on marula trees. And then in 1974, a documentary filmmaker by the name of Jamie Uys produced two documentaries called Animals Are Beautiful People. And one of the best known sequences from one of these movies was of elephants getting off their tits on marula. And, you know, it did really, really well. He is an Oscar-winning documentary filmmaker. He got a Golden Globe Award for the best documentary for this film.
I feel like you're setting us up to tell us it's like the Lemons all over again, isn't it?
Yeah. It was all made.
He spiked the marulas.
He spiked the elephants.
He didn't.
No.
So no one's 100% sure whether they soaked the marula fruit in alcohol and then gave it to the elephants, or even worse, gave them anesthetic to make them stumble around hammered on camera.
No.
It was all fake.
That's terrible.
Can you believe it? I mean, I have to admit, I kind of thought that it was true because I'd heard it so often in the past, and because, you know, you see Amarula bottles everywhere in Africa, and it's a really, really popular drink. And the whole idea about, you know, not just elephants, but baboons and other animals as well getting drunk on marula fruit is so omnipresent that I thought it was true. But now I hear that no, they were spiked. How wild is that?
There's two things spring into mind for me. And the first one is I feel like I've been lied to because I'm sure I've seen photos over the years in different articles where like, oh, a cute family of drunk elephants asleep in the grains.
Me too, Sarah.
And then the second one, though, Lizzie, isn't there a story of elephants actually raiding a village for alcohol? Have you read that one?
No, I haven't.
It's definitely happened with some kinds of monkeys. So there are monkeys that will preferentially raid villages, tents, looking for booze for obvious reasons.
And actually, I was of the same mind that it's and elephants and monkeys, out of all the animals, are the ones that constantly come up as the ones to be drunk.
Yeah, I mean, you just have to search drunk elephants, and there's all sorts of things that come up. One of the headlines that just came up there: village left reeling after 70 elephants destroyed 60 homes after feasting on hooch produced locally for a festival. So I don't know if they've got a taste for it here and there.
There was also a story of dolphins that apparently the behavior that was observed, I don't know if you've heard about this, but it was like dolphins upside down, kind of really dazed. And they realized that this pod of dolphins were near a pufferfish, and they had experienced the tetrodotoxins of a pufferfish that kind of was believed to maybe be to get them in the state of kind of being high. And I was reading it was something like 120,000 times more powerful than like cocaine or something if you misjudge the amount of tetrodotoxin that you've got in your system.
Did you guys ever see that Spies in the Wild thing where the BBC documentary, and they made a pufferfish to go in with the dolphins with a little camera on, and it was sort of swimming around and it was getting knocked about a little bit by the dolphins, but then they actually caught the behavior of dolphins, and I think it was the first time it was filmed in the wild where they caught them literally taking a little puff, passing it on, taking a little puff, passing it on, but they're like nibbling this quite stressed out pufferfish, and they're just microdosing on that neurotoxin that you said, and it has that narcotic effect. All sorts of puns in my head. I've got all sorts. I'm like, pass the puffer to the left-hand side. It's just like a ridiculous situation. I know.
That's so wild though, isn't it? Because just a tiny amount too much and it would be absolutely lethal. So I spent a lot of time living in Japan, and in Japan, fugu, which is sashimi prepared from pufferfish, to be a fugu sashimi chef, you have to train for years. And you will train so that you have just the right amount of the skin and organs, which is the bit where the tetrodotoxin is found, so that people experience what's called the brush of death, which is a numbness to their lips. And if you've had that, you've had just the right amount of fugu. But every year in Japan, people die because they've had too much tetrodotoxin, because even slightly too much is so virulent that it will kill. Yeah. So those dolphins, they are playing with fire. It's kind of weird as well, though, because it doesn't, as far as I understand it, fugu poisoning doesn't make you high. It doesn't make you hallucinate. It takes away sensation, it gives tingling, and then it kills you. So, yeah.
I don't know. That apparently, I mean, on the video, because you can see the videos of them actually passing this puffer, they do look a bit like
spaced
very
out,
chilled, shall we say.
I guess what we're talking about then is the motivation as to why we're seeing these behaviours, and across different species across the world. You know, why are animals getting drunk?
Same reason we are, because it's a laugh.
Life's stressful, Lizzie.
Good time, big night out on Saturday, you know. I just want to kind of come full circle back to the ethanol and what you were talking about, Steve, because part of that fermentation process, so the production of ethanol when the yeast is kind of breaking down those sugars and producing ethanol in that process in, you know, saps and fruits, it's kind of a byproduct, and this happens when fruit overripens. But it also is particularly smelly, and apparently in vervet monkeys and in elephants, that smell can actually be a real indicator that a fruit is ripe and ready to eat. So in some ways, having that kind of ethanol in it is an attractive quality for a lot of species, because they know it's a good food source, it's going to be full of sugar, you know, it's an easy win. And I guess the question is, you know, are they therefore, especially in species like vervets, are they looking for that high? And are those behavioural responses that we're seeing, you know, mirroring our own and our joys and going out and getting hammered? Or is this something that is just a byproduct?
I mean, do you talk like this, Lizzie, when you're about to go out for a couple of beers with your pals? Because I think that would be such a downer. Can you imagine Lizzie going, yes, of course, from an evolutionary perspective, the reason that we're going out for a few beers is because...
I hate to break it to you, Steve, but the biggest party animal is actually sat on the call with us right now, because I have seen Lizzie on a couple of nights out and she's wild. But Lizzie doesn't need much of that tetrodotoxin or anything like that to get her going, do you, mate?
But, you know, kind of coming back to the vervets as a great example, apparently, you know, some of the older ones that have gone through that experience a few times, they are less likely to go out on what we would call, you know, binge drinking and going into these fermented fruits in the same way that the younger ones would. So there are really some behaviours that are being mirrored in other species as well.
There is another example that I've got, which I love. It's not to do with alcohol. In fact, it's to do with psychedelics. and it has a really rather wonderful connection to Christmas and to the origin of all of our various Christmas myths. And it's to do with the fly agaric mushroom. So you know the fly agaric mushroom, it's the classic one that you always see a gnome sitting on or an elf sitting underneath in stories.
Oh, like a toadstool.
Yes, exactly. So
red and dotty.
Bright red with white dots. They're in the Amanita genus, and they are known to have psychedelic properties. And for people of the north, they have been treasured for millennia as a psychedelic, as a way that they can, particularly shamans, can commune with other worlds, and they can get, a connection to the afterlife and a connection to, the metaphysical. But it can be absolutely lethal to us as humans. However, reindeer are able to consume Amanita mushrooms. They appear to suffer no ill effects from it. And then their urine contains the psychedelics, but not the poisons. And people who have herded reindeer have known about this for centuries and will drink reindeer urine in order to get high and have that transcendent experience.
Cool.
And the amazing connection to this is, so you've got a bright red, bright white mushroom.
Oh, it's Santa. Did
It's
they
Santa.
and the reindeers flying
Those
high, that
buzzing.
could have just all been their
Exactly.
psychedelic.
Yes,
Oh my
exactly.
God. Where did the bells come from?
So
Is
during
that the
the
walrus?
trip-
The walrus doing the bells at the
Oh my
same
gosh,
time.
you've got it.
We've got it. That's Christmas.
So during the reindeer wee trip, the shamans would see the future of the community. They would turn into animals, notably their reindeer, and fly towards the North Star in search of knowledge to share with the rest of the people.
Like a present.
And the red and white, exactly, yes. So the red and white of Santa Claus doesn't come from the Coca-Cola company, as we are so often led to believe. It comes from the fly agaric mushroom, and the whole idea of Santa flying on his sleigh, taken by flying reindeers, comes from the trips of shaman who have been drinking reindeer wee. What do you think of that?
Oh, that
love
is
that.
actually insane.
That is my ultimate party animal story.
I love it. Wait, guys, Santa is real though, yeah?
Oh gosh, yeah, of course.
Yeah,
of course.
obviously.
Okay, cool. Just
Yeah,
checking.
he just likes reindeer pee.
Just checking.
It's a delicacy. Well, speaking of something else that flies and drinks at the same time, I would like to take you to the humble bat, because lots of bats around the world drink nectar and are really, really important in our food chain, but particularly for the people that like to drink tequila. So 2022, 2 billion tons of blue agave plants, which are used to make tequila, were harvested. It was over 170 million gallons of tequila that was created just from that alone.
Wow.
And it was mostly sold in the US. But these agave plants, they're used to make multiple different alcoholic beverages, including mezcal as well. And they're in high demand, especially in recent times. Now, the problem with that is that agave only flower once in their lifetime and then they die. And in that flowering period, that is when the bats need the most, because that's when they come in and they drink the nectar, and they have a really important role because they then pollinate the agave and make more agave. But the way to keep the sugar in the stem, which is needed to make the drink, is to chop that flower head off before it grows. So now the problem that you've got is you've got all these pregnant bats that are making their migration with nothing to eat along the way. So the bat numbers are going down in this area of the world, especially for the lesser long-nosed bat, the long-nosed bats, and the Mexican long-tongued bats. Those are the three species particularly affected. And so now there's a big call for farmers and for producers to save at least a small percentage of their agave and allow them to flower, which is better for them in the long run, because you want to have a bit of genetic diversity rather than just relying on clones of agave. But it also, they're trying to teach farmers about the value of the bats as sort of, instead of pesticides, because bats support so much life. They're a keystone species. Now, anyway, back to the bats, because they're drinking while they're drinking nectar, right? Because nectar also contains alcohol.
Yep.
Scientists captured some bats and they're like, we can't drink and drive, but can they drink and fly? So they fed very, very small amounts of alcohol to some of the bats that they'd caught. They made sure they didn't get pregnant ones, say this in this study. Yeah, they gave them little amounts of alcohol, and then they put them in an assault course, a bat assault course, and they found that the alcohol didn't affect them. They could fly perfectly well, drunk or sober, and their sonar was not affected. So,
impressive.
If you went out with a bat on a night out, I think it would drink you under the table, Lizzie. Not many people would, but a bat, they've got it.
And have you had spit alcohol?
No.
What?
It was in Central and South America, where local women will chew up particular local plants and then spit it out, and the spit helps to ferment the alcohol, and then you drink it. So you drink.
Have you tried it?
Of course he has.
Yeah, of course. You can't say no. It's one of those things that you have to say yes to, and wow, it is potent.
Just have to say yes to it, Lizzie.
Strong visuals on this call. So when I was looking at party animals for this episode, I kind of was trying to pick out other things, not just to do with narcotics or spit or alcohol. And
you were looking for the sober curious animals.
Yeah, exactly. I actually came across a really cool study. And I wanted to throw it in because it's all about chytrid fungus, which is a disease that affects amphibians. So our frogs, our toads, our salamanders, and it's a global disease. It's decimated, populations across the world. The study that they did is actually how it's essentially a sauna party for frogs.
But what is the chytrid fungus? What is it?
So yeah, a bit of background. So chytrid fungus, it's essentially a group of fungi, but the chytrid fungus that you and I will have heard of is really in reference to Bacteria, and here we go, I'm going to try and nail this. Batrachocatridium dendrobatiditis.
Oh yeah, that one I talk about all the time. Yeah.
Rolls off the tongue after
Round of
tequilas.
applause. Lizzie pulls it out of the bag.
I'm going to call it BD from here on out.
Yeah.
And Batrachocatridium salamandrivians, a little bit easier. I'm going to call it B-cell. Anyway, these two are particularly deadly for a lot of our amphibians. They've caused massive decline. Essentially, how it works is this fungus will get into the skin of amphibians, and we know that surface layer is incredibly important for breathing, for regulating water, for pretty much everything. And so these fungal spores that land on the skin then kind of build up these fungal colonies and end up in that amphibian, not being able to do very basic things, surviving and then dying. So what scientists have discovered with a particular species, the green and golden bell frog, is that if they keep these bell frogs in these contained, almost like mini saunas at around 29, 30 degrees, not only does it kill off this fungus, but it also actually builds up the immunity of these frogs as well. So obviously it's not a kind of global application just because not all frogs live in these kind of warmer climates like this species do, but it's a really incredible thing considering this disease has been so destructive, around the world. Not only are they able to create a low cost and really effective way of killing off this fungus at certain temperatures, but it just means that over time, these frogs will be able to build really good resistance should they come across this fungus again, which I love. Sauna party.
Clothing optional, apparently.
It's fantastic. The only downside to the whole thing is the story of chytrid fungus itself, which has led to amphibians being probably the most decimated group of vertebrates on the planet. It has spread at a terrifying rate across the world, and so many species have disappeared completely because of chytrid, and trying to find a way of getting on top of it is next to impossible.
Yeah.
So yeah, I've taken your fabulous fun story there and added a tinge of Armageddon.
But it's true. I mean, it's one that I think everyone has hopefully heard of because it must be one of the most successful diseases out there. And, this species in particular, about 90% or more of their range has been affected because of this disease. Yet now they're 23 times more resistant to it because of this really easy way of thermal therapy and kind of sparring, if you like, to get rid of it.
I imagine if it's good for frogs, there'll be a lot of people saying, and that is my excuse for why I'm going to the sauna this weekend. There we go. It's good for the frogs. It's good for me. But it probably is, isn't it, actually?
Naked, according to you, Sarah.
Well, the frogs aren't putting clothes on, so...
I have one tale I'm desperate to tell you guys.
Yeah.
Have you heard about arachnids on acid?
No.
when I first heard this, I thought it was an April Fool's joke, but it's not. It's real. In 1948, Peter Witt started a bunch of experiments on spiders that weave webs. And what he did was he microdosed them with a whole bunch of different narcotics. So he would give them all sorts of things, LSD, benzodrine, caffeine, cocaine, amphetamines, and he would see what effect it had on their building of the webs. And the results were extraordinary.
Really?
So, for example, the ones who had a little bit of cannabis would start quite promising, but then after a little while would just kind of go, oh, do you know what? I'm just going to give up. I'm just going to sit here. You know, I've got the munchies, but I can't be bothered to do anything about it. The ones that were on cocaine and amphetamines would go at 1,000,000 miles an hour, making their web in record time. The ones who were given LSD would create a whole bunch of psychedelic shapes in their webs, which was completely unprecedented. Probably the one that had the worst effect was caffeine. So we think of caffeine as being, a drug that we probably have each and every single day. But the spiders who had caffeine were completely useless. They would go manic all over the place, building a web that didn't work, that was completely incapable of catching any insect whatsoever, and then just give up and sit shaking in a corner.
Sounds like me on caffeine.
There you go. It is conclusive proof that we need to wean ourselves off caffeine because it's far stronger and far more dangerous than you would ever imagine.
Oh, wow.
And also conclusive proof that there are a lot of scientists who've got way too much time on their hands.
Right? Too much funding, too much time.
It makes you think so much about the guy behind that study, like what in the world made him, you know what I mean? Like, has that something he'd seen in himself?
He was probably taking quite a lot of those drugs himself. Yeah.
Maybe I need to investigate this further. It's like a reverse Spider-Man story, isn't it? It's drugs to the spiders instead of spiders to the humans. But anyway, speaking of arachnids on acid, which has such a ring to it, Steve, I want to talk to you about...
Title of my autobiography, I think.
Literally. Well, Cocaine Bear. That crazy film, it came out.
Did you watch it, Sarah?
Do you know what? I didn't watch it. I've seen quite a few. The Revenant for me is the most accurate bear attack stories out there. But this was the idea that the bear had eaten a load of cocaine, come across that, and then it goes on a rampage, killing people all through, and it's like a horror film, isn't it? But it's based on a true story. Did you know that?
No.
So here's the true story, which I think is even more wild. In 1985, there was a former narcotics agent who turned drug smuggler, and he figured out a way of bringing Colombian drugs into the US. And that was, he had a little Cessna that he put on autopilot, and he filled it full of drugs, and he flew it over into the US. I think he was just above Georgia when it happened. He had overfilled it slightly, so he knocked a few of these drugs out of the plane, to try and lighten the load. Realised that's probably not quite working out, so then he got his parachute and he jumped out himself, but knocked himself out on the back of the plane on his way out and ended up dropping to his death. The plane then crashed, so millions of pounds of drugs you're talking about is then lost in the wilderness. And madness. So the Georgia Bureau of Investigation discovered on December 23rd on the same year, they found, unfortunately, a dead black bear who had discovered some of this cocaine first. So a lot of it got stolen by a man now known as Pablo Escobar, who took all of that back. Yep, you may have heard of him. But some of it got stolen by the black bear, and the black bear consumed 34 kilograms of cocaine. Oof. So 34 kilograms in his stomach. His entire stomach was full of cocaine, worth £2 million. This bear had a horrible death, I imagine, because that's a phenomenal overdose. But that bear then got taxidermied, and he was kind of like a local legend for a little while, and then he got sold. He even ended up in a charity shop at one point, and then basically the film came out, and now he is pride of place in this one establishment that you can go and get a t-shirt, "I've partied with Cocaine Bear," pose next to him. And I find it's quite sad, really, isn't it? Because it would have been a horrible way to go out. But yeah, gone but not forgotten.
Bonkers.
I imagine, because there's been, for the last 50, 60 years, tons of cocaine that's been ditched out of planes, often into quite wild areas or into wild seas even, and then picked up by other boats that are taking it into shore or picking it up from the forest and taking it. There must be other examples of animals that have scoffed down those drugs.
Oh, come on. You heard of cocaine shark. Please tell me you heard of cocaine shark.
Well, I was kind of hoping you might lead into
Oh, of course. I'm going to talk about cocaine shark. So cocaine shark started as a film. It's on IMDb. I think it got like 1 point something stars. Interesting trailer. But then it got made into a documentary because, of course, Shark Week got a hold of this, and a friend of mine actually was the presenter on it. Fish, Tom Hurd, and they did this entire Shark Week documentary about the plausibility of sharks eating floating cocaine that's been dumped off the side of boats or been dropped in a drug smuggling effort. So will sharks attack these white floating objects at the surface? It was a bit of a stretch, shall we say? I don't know what you think, Steve.
Did they try and recreate that? I mean, knowing Shark Week, I can quite imagine them.
Of course they did.
Having a bunch of cocaine floating at the surface and saying, "Let's see what happens."
Yeah, of course. In true Shark Week fashion, they had a bit of fun with it. And it was they had scientists on there, and it was very speculative until 2024, and 13 sharp-nosed sharks taken from the coastal waters near Rio de Janeiro were found with traces of cocaine in their muscles and their liver. And this study was published in Science of Total Environment journal. So,
wow.
Cocaine shark started as, this is ridiculous, this is so far-fetched, but suddenly it's like, oh my God, this is actually a reality. And most likely it's because of the illegal labs where the cocaine is being made, that runoff is then going into the rivers. But then also, second part, there's that much usage of it, it's coming in through the sewage as well. So through people's excrement and urine, it's getting into the water systems. And it's not just found in sharks. We've found it in other species too, like crabs and mollusks and fish. And we really actually don't know what the results are, whether they're having a party there or if actually there's something more
wild.
Well, a bit more sinister going on we need to look into. I don't know.
But to Steve's point, it makes sense, right? That amount of drugs on the planet, and it's a growing industry and it's massive. How much is actually infiltrating into our environment and being dropped off in the middle of nowhere, as well as then just being out there as pollution. It must be extraordinary.
Well, we talk about water quality a lot in the UK, and I think there's certain things like hormones and stuff that I was always aware, it's going into our water systems and we don't know how to get it out. But I didn't realise cocaine was a thing.
This has put me in mind of a couple of years ago. It was all over the national press that scientists have been testing the rivers, waterways, lakes around Glastonbury post the festival.
Oh, wow.
And found them to have huge levels of MDMA and cocaine in the water. And I imagine, all the fish, all of the frogs and toads and newts are living in water that's, got sky-high levels of narcotics in them.
There has to be.
Glastonbury must have been surrounded by stoned stoats and wonky weasels and
literally
sky high.
Not funny, really, but
kites.
That's kind of funny. Kites. Can I just very quickly show you a small story? I was in Costa Rica, and just a few months before, I was there with a scientist, and she said a few months before on the same beach, she saw like this big kind of thing on the beach, and she thought, wow, maybe it's a leatherback turtle. We haven't had those for a very long time. So she went back to the research camp, got binoculars, and then started to walk down the beach. Once she wanted to basically scan it, see what it was. So 50 kgs of cocaine had washed up on this beach.
Does she have a very big house now?
No, she had to report it. We've never heard of her.
She now drives a Lamborghini.
Yeah, so she then had to report it, and then had to go underground for a while, because she said it was super dangerous finding.
She's just made her own drug bust there accidentally, hasn't she?
Can you imagine?
That is also a brilliant topic for a film or a book.
Yeah.
A struggling biologist on the coast of Costa Rica finds 50 kilos of cocaine and decides to fund their... Oh, no, don't get me
Shush,
started.
Steve,
I'm
shush,
pitching to
Steve.
you all.
Yeah, shush. What are you doing?
We're talking about Costa Rica, actually. There is another animal that comes from Central America and South America that has been seen using substances for evident physical effects, and that's capuchin monkeys. Both capuchin monkeys in the New World and lemurs in Madagascar have been seen grinding up centipedes and more often millipedes and rubbing the secretions into their fur. And it seems that primarily that is because millipedes have lots and lots of secretions that they will exude to be able to drive away potential predators. There's even the presence of cyanide in those secretions. And it seems that capuchins and lemurs as well will rub it into their fur as an insect repellent or an antibacterial or antimicrobial. But at the same time, when you watch them doing it, anyone look it up on YouTube, look up lemurs, grinding millipedes into their fur, or capuchins doing the same, and you can see this almost crazed enjoyment from the animals. There's clearly something about it that they find physically incredibly stimulating, but in that slightly uncomfortable way that sometimes you get a bit of a kick out of something, but at the same time it's a little bit ouchy.
Oh, you and your fire ants, maybe.
Yes, exactly that. Yeah. Well, I mean, that's not to everyone's taste, but you can tell the capuchins. They're like, oh, it hurts. I love it. Oh, yes, just right there. And I mean, it's almost it's a little bit uncomfortable to watch, to be honest, because there's almost something a little bit kind of I don't know, sadomasochistic about it.
It reminds me, actually, that whole kind of the rubbing of the scents and things. It reminds me of the lemurs, the scent wars that you get.
Oh, yes.
Yeah. So we talked about this before. So, I won't go too much into the behavior itself, but they do scent mark by using they rub their glands and then rub it on their tails and waft these scents in front of other males. And ringtail lemurs are really good at this. But in looking up kind of parties and big groups and what brilliant behaviour this is, I came across the fact that they also have what's called a scent war. So in building up this kind of chemical map by rubbing these scents, not only to others on their tails by kind of wafting it, but also on branches and leaves and rocks and in their environment, building up a territory, they then, another male from another territory will come and almost over-mark it. So what you then get is these groups of lemurs working together to essentially basically map as much kind of chemical composition as they can, as fast as they can, in is what's called a scent war. It's essentially a scent party. It's amazing how many different examples of kind of using scents there really are in terms of trying to communicate and battle it out.
Monkeys just generally, though, have you ever seen them mind sweeping? Where those people in the clubs that used to just go around and drink whatever drinks are left on the side.
Yeah, is that you, Sarah?
No,
speaking from experience.
Well, I have literally got footage of the long-tailed macaques in Bali just going scooter to scooter, uncapping energy drinks and just like whoop, down in the whole energy drink, throwing it on the floor, going to the next scooter. But there's different places around the world as well, like St. Kitts as well. I believe they go around looking for like leftover cocktails and just as soon as your back's turned, just mind sweeping off the table.
I've just suddenly had a thought. We've done this whole episode talking about all these far-flung exotic examples of animals getting high, and we've totally ignored or forgotten about something that will be familiar to just about everyone, which is catnip.
Oh yeah, catnip. Yeah.
It didn't even cross my mind, but catnip is this plant, and about 2/3 of cats will roll in it, they'll cover themselves in it, and they go into clearly a kind of euphoric state. And it's not just house cats, it happens with all kinds of wild cats too. For some reason, there's something about this flower, this plant, that drives cats absolutely crazy.
The wild extreme version of this with the jaguars as well and the yagvine. So they react to the yagvine similar to cats react to catnip.
Yeah, that's the one they use in ayahuasca as well, right?
So they are also probably tripping.
Yeah, It's psychedelic, and they do go on trips, right? So I'd imagine it's the same for the jaguars.
I wonder what jungle fables the jaguar's creating in his brain. If we got Santa Claus
Flying.
from, the mushrooms, what do you think the cat sees when it's tripping?
Yeah.
Can you imagine anything more frightening than a jaguar on a bad trip?
Oh,
This has got to be the follow-on for Cocaine Bear, surely.
what do you call it? Tripping jags or something? That's bonkers. Yeah, imagine coming across that. Do you think it would behave, do you think it would try and hunt and try and interact?
I mean, if you've seen a cat on catnip where their pupils are so dilated and they're like pouncing, like my cat goes mental on catnip. It's like running around 100 miles an hour and almost climbing the walls, just like running up the curtains and stuff. Could you imagine a jaguar off its face, off a yag plant, just like, do you just happen to walk into that?
Oh, I'm not sure I'd want to come across that jaguar, that's for sure. But that's literally all we've got time for today, everyone. So for all those listening, remember, you'll have a Q&A episode coming your way on Friday. Please send us your questions to questions@that'sjustwild.com. We really do love reading them.
That's Just Wild is an original Fresh Air production. The producers are Eva Higginbotham and Izzy Clark. You can follow us on your favourite podcast app. Leave us a review. It makes all the difference to the whole team. And for ad-free listening, our newsletter, special deep dive episodes and members-only benefits, you can subscribe to us at that'sjustwild.com. Remember, we're on YouTube, TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, and you can find us at That's Just Wild Pod.
Thanks for listening. See you next week.